Pain is difficult to imagine until you experience it. Some decision makers in the United States have apparently not had so much experience with pain. They are lucky. But if public health bureaucrats and politicians had seen what chronic, severe, or intractable pain are really like, then they would know that this is not the pain of a twisted ankle. Some pain never goes away. Those who say, tough it out, are thinking about injuries or common illnesses. It would not matter what the politicians or anti-opioid zealots thought if they were not making decisions that determine whether you or those you love have access to pain medication. Today in America, we are in a process of prohibiting access to the strongest pain medications and really the best pain medications known. Government agencies are making arbitrary rules and prosecuting doctors who treat patients in ways that had been acceptable for decades. The book Z's Odyssey is the story of this injustice against vulnerable people who have no way to protest. It is both a personal story and an explanation of how pain came to be politicized. A person in pain is often too overwhelmed with survival to participate in a protest or write a letter to a congressman. Patient Z was disciplined and careful with his medication. He was a victim of a change in government policy on opioids. Indeed, there were excesses in opioid prescribing during the decade of the 2000s. These were not because a majority of pain patients were abusing their medication. It was certain corporations who influenced a self-selected group of doctors with financial enticements. Most of the abuse was by companies that sold opioid medications on the internet and later in pill mills. This corporate diversion circumvented the law. The companies and rogue doctors distributed opioids to anyone who had money to buy them. Government agencies and legislatures ignored this flagrant violation of the law. The Drug Enforcement Administration prosecuted small-town doctors and let major corporations get away with the crime of the century. Legislators at both state and federal levels received enormous campaign contributions in return for their support of policies to stop any regulation of the distribution of opioids. However, when the situation spiraled out of control, and when previously healthy people became victims of aggressive prescribing, and then some of them died of overdoses, the extent of the malfeasance became public knowledge. Politicians, government agents, and the media pointed fingers at doctors. Doctors, as a whole, were a relatively easy target, since they do write prescriptions for pain medication. By blaming doctors, government agents and public health officials were implicitly blaming all patients who received medication. Those who had a legitimate need were treated the same as any abuser. This policy has become more restrictive with time, despite the fact that some in the U.S. government realized their mistake. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, was the first government agency to implement guidelines to restrict prescribing. Later, when the CDC wanted to reverse that policy, it was too late. Those guidelines were seized on by state legislatures and immediately turned into laws. The politicians went further and began to demand reductions in opioid manufacturing and enforcement of prescribed limits by state medical boards. Patients have been cut off or had their dose reduced to the point of misery. When a person is in so much pain that it is not possible to move, how can that person communicate the injustice that has been done? The book Z's Odyssey tells the story of such a person. However, the book also has a positive message. Patient Z discovered pain relief on his Odyssey by overcoming the stigma against buprenorphine. Many pain patients fear the use of buprenorphine because it has been used as addiction medication for decades. However, it is also pain medication. If you go to the National Health Service website in Great Britain, you will find that buprenorphine is a standard first-line analgesic. It is an opioid, but it is safe and effective. If taken as directed, there is no risk for respiratory depression, the effect of a morphine or heroin overdose. Yet at high dose, buprenorphine is as effective as morphine or any of the strong opioids. Patient Z had to make a long journey, an odyssey, through pain clinics and palliative care until he found a pain research institute, where he was first introduced to buprenorphine as pain medication. Z's odyssey gives enough background information to convey the reasons for the travesty of the policy that led to this abysmal situation. However, the book is mainly about Patient Z and how he experienced clinics and doctors on his way to finding a resolution. Since Patient Z has an incurable autoimmune disease, the book also discusses real-life issues that affect millions of people living with the reality of debilitating disease and pain. The experience is common to many cancer patients or people who have suffered from severe accidents or battlefield wounds. Pain relief is essential to make life bearable for those people. Those who deny this are simply denying that pain exists because they cannot feel it. Z's Odyssey is also about compassion for our fellow human beings. It is time to get law enforcement out of the doctor's office, and it is time to return to rationality and find the appropriate balance in the doctor-patient relationship.